night with my friend Deborah here, Deborah Conquest. It's really, really great to be in studio together talking about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome. Do you have imposter syndrome? Do you want to overcome? Do you want to unpack and get rid of, understand imposter syndrome so that you don't have it weighing on your shoulders as you're trying to go through life? Let me just tell you what it is. Then I'm going to introduce Deborah and we're going to talk about it. We're going to unpack it, understand it, and then see how to navigate around it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And while we're doing that, we are going to be making snowflakes because they're unique.
It's cold here.
It's cold here in Rochester, New York. And also every snowflake is unique. And so we thought that would be it would go along with our theme because you are unique. You know, we have a lot of self-doubt, and self-doubt comes in the context of our culture because we have these high expectations in Western culture. And so we have these high expectations. We don't think we can meet them. We're really afraid that everyone's going to see that we are inadequate, unable, not enough. And so we start to think that about ourselves too. We have a lot of self-doubt. And when we have so much self-doubt that we think that we might not deserve success, or we think that somebody else could see that we're a fraud, we're not as great as we're acting or something like that, or we want people to see, then we feel bad about it. And that's called imposter syndrome. So when I posted that I was going to do this topic, Deborah reached out to me and said, I'd love to be on and talk about imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So I work with singers. I'm a vocal coach, and I run an online studio called Conquest Voice Studio, and I work with singers as young as high school and as old as 88. That's, I know, one of the students.
Her or
I
him.
know, she's amazing. Her. And gosh, I feel like I hear all the time in my work so much self-doubt, so much comparing themselves to others. And it, of course, reflects my own journey as a person, as a human, as a singer. So I was just saying before we started that I feel like I spend so much, not so much, but some of our time in vocal coaching talking about imposter syndrome, talking about how can we, we're a studio of recovering perfectionists. And yes, including me.
Yes,
recovering perfectionists. There's a lot of training out there now about
like for singers or everybody?
For singers, for voice teachers, about how to work through your perfectionism. And
I think performers particularly are so worried about perfectionism because it's so outward facing. You know, all of your failures, all of your skills are outward facing and everyone can see every little bit of it. It's hard.
And
it's
even
hard.
more so with singing, your instrument is your body. As you know, your daughter is a singer.
Yep.
And so there's nothing to hide behind. You're not hiding behind a piano or a cello, or not that they don't have imposter syndrome, because
they do.
But you're so vulnerable. And so as a singing actor, how can you be vulnerable and also, be authentic? And if you feel like, this has to be perfect, or there's only one way to be, you really strip out the authenticity and the creativity.
Yeah. There's like the rigidity. If you think perfectionism is so rigid, you have to be this one way or else. Mm-hmm. And so or else is very vague, but it's like that is not.
And we don't even know what the or else is.
We don't know what it is. It's vague. And that's anxiety being vague like that. But it's, if you're not perfect, it's like you think that is the worst possible thing, or whatever this what else is so dreaded. You're embarrassed, you're kicked out, you won't get anywhere, you're not successful, people won't like you anymore, right? The whole list goes on.
I'll never have a career, I'll never make it.
I'll never make it. Why am I doing this?
Right.
And I think a lot of people leave performance because it's too much. Mm-hmm. There's that that fight or that conflict within them of, I love this, I don't want to do this, I think I have some skill to, like, I'm not perfect and people are going to see it all the
Yep.
time and I'm never going to make it, and the competition is fierce. It really sets people up for competition for sure.
Yeah, and I was just today thinking about coming on here today. I was looking up the definition and the etymology of competition, and it comes from comperare, the Italian, or I know the Italian word, but comperare in Latin, which is to pair or to match.
Oh,
And it's not, either or. It's to pair two things together or to match two things together.
ooh. I love when things get turned on their head. Something that is so divisive or so like really shreds us, competition, comparing ourselves.
Yep.
And we're in such a comparison culture. And I think it's those high expectations again. They're so high that we are looking to other people to see if we're meeting them and what is the expectation. They're vague. The expectations are vague, right? It's like you have to be coolest, the best singer, the thinnest, the youngest, the best actor, whatever. That's even just in the performance, singing, acting. But you have to be the best, but you're not really sure what that is. It's undefinable completely. Like perfectionism is undefinable. And so you think that you have to be more, and you're looking to other people to see if you're cutting it. And you're comparing yourself to people that are like apples and oranges.
Exactly. Apples and oranges. So perfect example. I'm also a competitive weightlifter. And did you know that?
Yes. I love it. I love watching your journey.
I didn't start that until I was almost 50. Hard to believe, but I didn't start that until I was almost 50. I know. So I'm training for my next competition, which is in like 10 weeks or something. And I'm actually at the gym now. And this happened yesterday. So there's the little group of trainees that I'm in, yesterday there were only these two women. So after we're all catching our breath after 2.5 hours of working out.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, quite literally catching our breath. And we sit down, we're chit-chatting, and we've only had, I think, 2 previous workouts together. And we start talking, and the comparison is just so dumb. I mean, I sit here and I know this, right? And I can tell that these women are younger than me. And this one woman was a high school athlete and a college athlete. She's 25. And in my head, I'm comparing myself, right?
Like how much she could lift compared to how much you lift.
And I'm like, well, I still need to best her. And I've been like, right, so dumb. So dumb. And then this other woman is like in her 30s. But in that moment, I felt like, yeah, but I still have to be better than they are. Like, what is that? It's comparing
so
apples and oranges.
It's such a pervasive thing. None of us are none of us come in a little bit more here. None of us can escape it. Like we all grew up in this Western culture. And so we all have this thing that we're still fighting against. And maybe you fought against it a lot and like are really made peace with yourself. And I hope you have. You can, it's possible. But like there's always going to be this whisper in these kind of times where it just like comes up in our face and you're like, I didn't tackle that yet.
Yeah. And it was so surprising because I'm like, I'm absolutely the strongest and it doesn't matter. Like I'm the oldest and I'm the strongest but I'm built differently. Like this one, they're both I'm very short. Both of these women are much taller than I am. I'm like, it's so like, I was like, I know this, but it is enmeshed in our culture. I think so. Even when we know it and we're aware of it, here I am comparing to myself to someone half my age.
I think the part where you know that you're making some progress is you have awareness of it and you're like a witness of yourself. You're like, did I just say that?
Mm-hmm.
Did I just say that? Okay, I understand why I said that. Like I grew up in Western culture. Oops, I'm hitting my mic. I understand why I said that. Imposter syndrome gets all of us. This self-doubt that's so pervasive, it gets us. But when you're making that progress on this healing journey, you're noticing that you're doing it earlier and earlier.
Yeah. And I guess that's
you can laugh maybe a little bit. But when you're witnessing yourself, you're like, okay, I'm doing this right there. And then like you're not attached as much to it when you're starting to witness. And that is growth. I love it.
Yeah. And both of these, we'll say young women, both of these young women were like, what? How old are you? And I was like, yeah, that is like amazing, right?
Did they notice that you were comparing, or what did they notice?
No, I was comparing in my head.
Okay.
But we had never talked about how old anyone was, and
Yeah.
I don't look my age.
No, you don't.
No, we don't look our ages. But like you don't know. I have no idea how old anybody is. So and it's not. I try to think of myself like not ageist, but I get in that arena and I'm like, yeah, but I want to outlive this person who's half my age. Dun dun dun.
Yeah, so the comparison, and then there's the word competition, right? So
right.
like we have this competitive nature, but that goes to the biological, that core biological survival thing that we have to survive in the world and not get bested, I guess, or not get beat up but we don't need that in these contexts.
Right. And especially the kind of lifting I do is powerlifting, and I'm really only competing against myself. There's nobody in my weight class and my age class. It's me.
So you're just getting your best numbers.
I'm just getting my best PR every time. And I'm just in it like to have fun. I don't want to hurt myself, to get stronger. And that's about like inner strength as well as, physical strength. And here I am like, well, how old are they? Well, I want to be sure I'm always lifting. I hope they're not listening. I'm always lifting.
They're going to relate. Deborah, if
they are going to relate.
They're going to be like, oh my God, I did the same thing in my own
head. Right.
And then us women have to stick together and say, okay, let's like say these things out loud. So at the moment, all three of you could have been like, this is ridiculous. You're awesome. You're awesome. You're awesome. Like that's what.
And it's so true. And that's really the ethos of powerlifting. And then I had this, moment of like different. I see that happen all the time with the singers I work with. The classic. They're at an audition and they've got their ear to the door, listening to the other people, the people who went in front of them or who are coming after them, and the door is a liar. You can't possibly hear correctly, through the door. And if we think about the door, maybe like a filter of other things, like you can't compare yourself,
like a literal filter on Instagram.
Yeah, the literal filter.
Like there's the door. It's not real. Ooh, I love what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not real at all. And then I think especially, or my lived experiences as a woman in this society, we just like carry that around like our albatross. Like, well, I didn't get XYZ role, or I didn't get XYZ part, or I didn't win this competition,
and then it affects, like we have it in us, like for that next audition, we hold on to it,
Right.
Do you notice when you're thinking about, because I know you talk to people in all ages, when you notice people who are younger, do you feel like this comparison culture is actually getting worse?
I feel like it's getting better.
Oh,
I feel like it's getting better.
Tell us.
Or maybe I just happen to be lucky enough to work with enlightened folks. I think they're aware of it. Wow, that is beautiful.
One of a kind, just like you.
Let's see what I have here. Mine is going to be.
Oh yeah, cool.
Different. Mine's almost like a flower situation. I like this.
It's gorgeous.
So I find, I don't know. I really try in my studio.
It's getting better, you said.
Yeah, to talk about don't listen at the door. Go in with blinders on. Like and leave with blinders on. Go and do your thing, whether it's an audition, a competition, whatever. In fact, I don't generally send my students to competitions. There's lots of competitions out there. Because I don't know, yes, you can get feedback, but I'm not sure how constructive sometimes that is. But competition exists and it's a real thing and it's out there. But I do feel like sometimes it's getting better. some of the older folks I work with sometimes come in and the first thing they say is, I hate my voice. And to say you hate this, part of yourself that is so expressive is so sad. I hate my voice.
It's interesting to say that, to sign up for voice lessons
Mm-hmm.
and to say that I almost like love them that they're want to cut. There's this thing, I hate my voice, or I feel this way. I have this relationship with my voice and I don't want to stay like this.
Mm-hmm.
And they reach out to you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like a whole different story if you're thinking about it. Yes, it's sad when we think about that they hate their voice, but these are people who do not want to stay hating their voice because they reached out to you and they want something different. I love that.
And then when I tell
love that.
them, everyone who at every first lesson tells me they hate their voice, they're like, what?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So imposter syndrome says you're the only one who thinks that you're not good enough, because we look around and we see everybody and we think, oh my God, everybody looks fine. They're happy. They're confident. They're walking around. They're auditioning. They look great. And we think we're the only one in our head thinking that we hate our voice.
And I think it's important to kind of normalize, you know what, everybody comes in wanting to figure out how to mix their chest voice and their head voice. They can all either do one or the other. And almost everybody feels like, I hate my voice.
It's like the grass is always
greener. Yep.
If you could belt, you want a high voice.
Yep.
If you have a high voice, you want a belt.
Exactly.
Right.
It's fascinating.
Because all the parts, like you always see the other person getting the parts,
mm-hmm.
So if you're a soprano, you're like, I want a belt.
And so one thing I do is I have them record themselves, which I find really helpful. So I use the Marco Polo app.
Oh yeah,
a lot, and I have them, record a snippet, 30 seconds or a minute or 15 seconds, and then send it to me. And I say, don't post it on social media. Don't share it with your friends. Just listen to it, send it over to me, and 9.9 times out of 10, you know what they say? Oh my gosh, I can't believe how good I sound. I can't believe I look so good. I thought I was doing blah, blah, blah.
So because they're sharing it with you and not sharing it with peers or not sharing it online, they're less critical and they're able to see their true self.
Well, no, they had no idea. They had nothing reflecting back how they were singing or acting. And so they weren't singing in front of a mirror. They just, when we sing, the sound vibrates off of the bones in our face. And so they're feeling that, but we can't properly hear what our voice sounds like. It's like when you hear your voice on a voicemail.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, oh, I sound like that.
Or on a video,
or on a podcast, and you're like, wow, I sound like that. And so I have them listen to themselves, and they're always pleasantly surprised because they had no idea, and it's a good way of keeping track of, oh my gosh, look at the progress I've done in a year, or just even looking at themselves, because sometimes just watching a video of ourselves is just gross, right?
Yes.
And we can watch somebody else audition or somebody else sing or perform or whatever, and we can be more objective because it's someone else. And then I think watching ourselves on a video gives us a little more objectivity.
So then we're like the witness again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, baby steps. Baby steps.
I love it. So, yeah. So give me some examples of when you grapple with imposter syndrome, or when you
when I don't. When I don't. So a great example is, I gave the example of the weightlifting. Another example is when I meet up with my colleagues. So I'm in practice for myself, and once a year I'll go to a meetup with colleagues, and I'm also in some online work groups with colleagues, and I hear, oh my gosh, they're doing blah blah blah, or their studio has a wait list, or they're working, how many people do they have on Broadway right now? And I only have this. And but that's, and then I'm like, whoa, but I know how to teach people. I've had people on Broadway. Maybe I don't have one right this moment, or maybe I have a couple holes in my schedule. I mean, it's so dumb, but again, it's that comparison, which really could be that, that classic thief of joy, and take me out of, the joy of being their teacher and being their co-conspirator in making music. And yeah, and like looking at numbers or looking at a spreadsheet or something. I think other examples are also, I look at some of my colleagues who maybe don't have children or aren't married or don't have a family, and I'm like, wow, look at all the crazy, amazing things they've done. And I was over here, raising my family, and I could have done blah, blah, blah. And I know I could have done that. But sometimes it's really tough, and again, I can catch myself like almost instantaneously, like, yeah, but then I
Do
wouldn't
you think that got better, like as you were, and maybe what changed? So as you were getting older, or as you were witnessing yourself, or maybe it's because when you started teaching more or whatever, I don't know. Like, are you getting faster at noticing?
Yes, absolutely. I think so therapy, self-reflection, self-awareness, like inner work for me has been really key. And now I feel like in some ways while it's still something that crops up, obviously just yesterday, I can at least see it, right? And it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make it, or I'm never going to, whatever it is, right? I think
What changed? Like, where was the corner that you turned?
That's a good
when
question.
you maybe it was starting some self-reflecting or starting some inner work. What's a story that gives us the example of, I don't know, the first time you noticed early, or you said, I'm done with carrying this albatross of
Yeah.
comparing and thinking I'm an imposter.
Um, I can think of a recent example. Is that okay? I don't know about
Sure.
the very first example. So I just applied for something, and I had a colleague help me out with my resume, and she picked up the phone and she was like, "This is so fancy. You're so fancy." And I was like, "I'm fancy?" I was just asking her to like quick take a look and edit it. And that was really validating. It wasn't like, blowing sunshine or anything. Just like, you're so fancy. And to hear that, I think, that kind of like positive validation from a colleague whose opinion I value kind of helped in that too, and feel like, oh yeah, I have a right to be here. And I do know what I'm doing. Yeah.
Did you ever give power to somebody who you didn't, that you maybe shouldn't have trusted to have power to name your worth?
For sure. I think that comes with being female, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And the older I got, the less I cared about that.
When you started lifting weights,
Yeah,
did it make a difference?
absolutely.
Like in
Absolutely.
your confidence
Absolutely.
and belief in yourself?
Yeah. So I started lifting weights because it was during COVID, and one of my dear friends from undergrad owned a gym, and she was complaining about how we had to keep gyms closed, right? Remember back in the olden days?
Yeah.
And so I was going to turn 50 a couple years later, and I thought, it's getting harder to get up off the floor. I should probably do something about that. I was never an athlete. I was a dancer, but I was never an athlete. And so I thought, well, let me start. Let me start. And so I started with her, and I just loved it. And it was something I was really good at. And I would literally like bounce out of bed in the morning, like, woo. And
Wait, in person to her?
no,
Like,
this was on Zoom.
Okay,
She was way on the other side of, the country.
okay. Just you and her.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Coaching. And then she said, do you want to join our powerlifting team? And I said, sure. What's powerlifting? And and so, the rest is history, as I say. But that feels like something like these snowflakes, like so special that I do. I don't really, have a community of people. I don't know anybody who,
Does
does
it?
does it. Although now I've just met these couple people at the gym, but yeah, it feels, I think feeling strong on the outside for me has helped me also kind of galvanize me to feel strong on the inside too.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's inside out, sometimes it's outside in, sometimes it's all
Both
of it.
ways.
Yeah.
Going both ways. I think exercise and lifting weights has a huge impact on confidence. It's a secondary impact
Yeah.
of any movement is it builds your confidence.
Yep.
One is because you're sticking to something. You're
Yeah.
like make a commitment and
Yeah.
you're sticking to it. Make a commitment for yourself, and that's going to raise your self-esteem. Just that. But there's hormones that come in. There's endorphins that come in, but then your body gets stronger, and overall you feel like I'm going to survive because I'm stronger. There's a biological aspect of it deep in there. So I love that. So when you started, so you had been on this journey, and you were being aware of yourself and understanding when that self-critic came in, telling you were an imposter, and then when you started lifting, it even was, you had more awareness. It was more confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was sort of at a similar time where I transitioned from working in academia for someone else to working just for myself. And that was a real big risk. And also a real, awareness of like, whoa, like, I can do this and pay the bills and not die and put food on the table. Yeah. And so that feels pretty good. And I'm not doing it. Ooh, look at you. That's beautiful. I'm not doing it in a vacuum. And I think that's important. I have a team. I have a coach. I have a therapist. I have friends. I have a cohort of colleagues. I have business coaches. So I wasn't just out there like do all by myself, and I think that was really helpful.
I think that makes a huge difference. We are social beings and we need a community. And then if you have all those people and they're positive or they're uplifting, yay! It's like a 4-leaf clover.
I was going to say, it looks like one of those nuclear alarm things.
Yeah, so it's when you're around people who lift you up or are positive or notice what you're doing, because of being in this a service business, I'm in there too. It is isolating in a lot of ways. So it's you're one-on-one with people, but also it's always about them, right? So when you're in a lesson with a student, they're at the center.
Yeah, it's their time.
It's their time, and so you do see people, but there's no, like, it's isolating is how I'm trying to describe it. So I love that you have all these people to then reflect back who you are.
And the other thing I'll say is,
doing.
I think when I was a kid, I used to think it's that like princess principle, right? I used to think there was going to be one person who was going to help me reflect back all the things. And now I know, oh, actually, it does take a village. I need this person to go to the movies with, and this person I go hiking with, and this person I go snowshoeing with, and this person likes to go out to dinner, do a podcast with, right? And so, and there's not one friend or one, intimate partner who fits all of those things.
Yeah. I think that a lot of the problem I speak about a lot is that we're in smaller and smaller households. And we're not supposed to be like that. We're supposed to be in community. We need more than one person to be that everything for us. We need touch. We need to problem solve with other people and other minds. We need to.
And isn't it funny how we got in this, like, I'm going to put everything on just one person.
I know. It does not work. It does not work. What do you got? You have 2 over there.
I've got 2 here. This one and whoops, this one got folded back up.
So, do you have any, before we end, we could do a couple more extra minutes here. Do you want to ask me any questions, any more questions about things? We covered a lot.
Yeah. So I actually just wrote an article.
I just want to see if there's a chat, but there wasn't.
I just wrote an article that was published talking about what to do if you don't get the gig, if you don't get hired,
Ooh.
if you don't get and because for some people I work with, that can be the end. That
Yeah.
can be like,
I wish there was a therapist here because
I wish there was a therapist.
I wish there was a
Ding, ding,
therapist in the
ding.
room. I'm an imposter. I have to answer this because really, there's no like one answer. If you have them think this way, they'll be fine.
Mhm.
Because it's kind of like talking them through it or talking them, it's how they're making meaning, right? If they have so much meaning around this one thing and this one thing is it, then the devastation is going to be so huge. But if it's like, listen, there's always another show, right?
Mhm.
Every 3
Mhm.
months is a different show.
Mhm.
And there's always another show. There's
It's hard to see that though. If it's like putting all your eggs in one basket. Like it's either this or nothing, and that very binary way of thinking. And so,
I think
yeah.
that we have to really, like you said, have a distance, right? And so the invitation is there and it may not land, but if you put that in, they hear it and it might not affect them now, it might affect them later. So that's one thing I have had to teach myself as a therapist, that sometimes you could say all the right stuff, but it's just not going to land because they're just not ready to hear it, or they're
Thank you
just
for
choosing
saying
to
that.
stay in that
Yeah.
difficult place, and it's, I'm not blaming them or anything. I'm not blaming the other person, but like, what is our responsibility? Like I offered it, the belief or the other way to think about it is there. And when they say yes to it, it'll drop down.
Mhm.
And so if I'm starting to judge myself by other people's limitations, that is a huge problem, right? And so of course, the validation has to come, the compassion has to come. We really understand that kind of devastation. We've seen, we've experienced that kind of devastation ourselves, that loss of that part. And then, so sticking with it for a bit, but then you kind of know when it goes a little bit crossing a line to like a negative spiral.
So I think
You know what I mean?
some of my older or more mature folks who I work with do know that. And I
They
think some of the teens I work with, they just haven't lived that
No,
experience. So what could I offer them?
I'm not sure what you're offering them is not exactly perfect. It probably is perfect. It just might not take away the pain,
Yeah.
right? And it may eventually take away the pain. It gives a good salve for the pain. It means you understand them. They have someone who really gets it. That in and of itself might be what they need.
Mm.
They might, we have pain, but can we get rid of the suffering? And inviting them that there's other ways to see it, it does land. And sometimes it's just delayed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so how, in this era of, I just
So
made
you
it like the same, in the era of instant gratification, how can we like sit with that for a minute until the delay is passed,
I think that sometimes with young people, if they feel bad, they think I'm doing wrong. Oops, sorry, I'm hitting my mic. I'm doing something wrong because I feel bad. I don't know how to handle this because I feel bad.
Mhm.
And I think they have to know that it's okay to feel bad. It's uncomfortable, but it's safe and it's completely understandable. It's exactly what you'd expect when you had this kind of disappointment. And I've been there before and I felt it before. And it does get better, but it really, really sucks right now. This acknowledgement of that. And you don't have to fix it. It'll fix itself. But your compassion is not going to go unnoticed. Your compassion is going to be completely felt and appreciated, and it is healing. So I think the invitation is to say, there's always another. This is the thing in this business. There's going to be, you're going to succeed a lot, and you're not going to sometimes, and it's going to be really hard. And but you're going to be okay. Like you're going to be okay.
Yeah, that
And
makes a
there's
lot of
tons of
sense.
parts. Like that's what I keep telling Lily all the time. There's tons and tons and tons of work out there. There's so much work out there.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, they're making so much stuff. There's so much work out there. And so yeah. And so you have to, and then as they mature, they'll get that,
Yeah. And sometimes just widening their, horizons, such as it is, like, oh, get to college and see, oh, there is more work, get to graduate school, move to New York, whatever. Oh, right.
There's a lot of work.
There's more work, or there are more opportunities, or
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do 100 auditions before I get whatever.
Yeah. Right.
That's tough.
And now there's like singing in all the TV and movies now,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
so if you're an actor who sings, it's not just Broadway you have.
Oh yeah.
And it's a different world out there, but yeah, there's so many ways you could take it. Anyway, well, thank you so much for watching our show on imposter syndrome. I appreciate all of you out there. And any other question, any other thing you want to leave people before we?
No, this was great. It's good to not feel alone and imposter syndrome. Here's my last one.
You are not alone. If you are feeling imposter syndrome, you're having a regular human response to the context of our world, because this is the Western culture really gives us these high expectations. If we knew that high expectations and we said they're ridiculous, we can combat that. Like we could say, no, I'm not gonna, this is like goals are relative, success is relative. You can't have somebody else define what success is. Results are relative. But what happens is the results are all that matters and our efforts don't matter. And our efforts are amazing, right? Mm-hmm. Our efforts are amazing. And we get so much more out of something when we put effort in than just the mere results of getting the part or something. There's so much we could learn along the way. So I guess that's, if we widen our horizons about what it means to be successful and what it means to be how you want to be as a human, you're there. Mm-hmm. You're there. I mean, I watch you online and, we met each other in a mom's group like a long, long time ago when our kids were little.
And our kids are adults.
Our kids are adults enough. But yeah, so I've been watching Deborah, and because we've been in the same musical theater world, we see each other at tons of shows, and she's the biggest cheerleader for her students. And I just really, if you are or can be one of Deborah's students, you are lucky.
Oh, thank you.
Lucky. She will advocate for you. She'll find opportunities for you, and you will learn how to shine through all the imposter syndrome that you feel, because we know you feel it, because this is the world we're in, and we're we as women have to stick together and remind each other that we are so much more awesome than we might see right now. And you are so awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to do my outro here, and I'll see you next week. I'm on live every Monday at 8 p.m. and if you're watching this recording, come on live so you could add to the discussion. And this is my text list, so you get on my text list and you get text from me, and you could write me back privately. That'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, how'd you like it?
Yeah, it was great. You made it really easy.
Oh, good.
Yeah, really easy.
Oh, good. How'd it go, Joe? How did that seem?